The world woke up different, in the sharp silence of the dawn. While the streets of Iran were still sleeping, the sky burned down with the deafening roar of F-35 fighters. Israel had just begun the boldest offensive in its recent history, Operation Rise Lion. The goal was clear and brutal: to destroy the heart of the Iranian nuclear program and eliminate its military dome in an attempt to cut through the root what Israel considers an existential threat. The first target was the most symbolic and strategic: Natanz nuclear complex. Considered the main center of uranium enrichment of Iran, Natanz was hit with surgical accuracy by a rain of laser-guided missiles. Satellite images show a devastating scenario: hangars reduced to rubble, thick smoke coming out of underground facilities, and a disorganized and fragile Iranian air response to the speed and sophistication of the Israeli attack. But Natanz was just the beginning. In a matter of minutes, missile bases, command centers, weaponry deposits, and anti-aircraft systems were hit in a military choreography that resembled the operation of 1981, only multiplied by 1,000 in scale and ambition. The timing was perfect. Iran had no time to react. Israel had infiltrated, days earlier, 50 Iranian soil teams to disable radars, sabotage defense systems, and facilitate airstrike. A plan meticulously designed over months. Iranian losses are immense. Several nuclear scientists were killed, among them 2 of the main engineers responsible for the centrifugation of military-grade uranium. But the biggest blow was the death of Hussein Salami, commander of the dreaded Islamic Revolutionary Guard, in a direct attack against the command center in Tehran. Its elimination was not a side effect, it was a clear and straightforward message. Israel is no longer playing the dissuasive game, is playing to win. The Israeli justifications for the operation are as dramatic as the attack itself. According to military sources, Iran would have already accumulated sufficient fissile material to build up to 15 nuclear pumps in a matter of days. The warning was ignored by the international community for too long, and Israel decided to act alone, even without direct support from the United States. But Washington's silence was, in practice, a green light. American authorities would have been previously informed, and although they did not participate, they did not try to prevent either. The offensive did not only have explosions in the Middle East, the impact was global. The international market went into momentary collapse. The price of oil fired, exceeding $110 per barrel, with the fear that the region would delve into a total war. Volatility in stock exchanges has only increased when former US President Donald Trump spoke. Iran had its chance to negotiate, now faces the consequences. If you don't accept a new deal, you'll face new attacks. Hard words that further burned their spirits in the Persian Gulf. Behind the scenes, even more explosive reports arise. Saudi Arabia and Jordan would have collaborated silently with Israel, allowing the use of their radar systems and helping to neutralize the first wave of Iranian drones launched in retaliation. An act that, if confirmed, would represent a deep reconfiguration of the alliances in the Middle East, with the Sunni axis aligning against Shiite Iran. But Iran is not an easy target. Hours after the bombing, the regime promised a devastating and unprecedented retaliation. More than 100 Iranian drones were launched against Israeli targets, but were successfully intercepted by air defenses and foreign logistics support. Still, the most feared threat remains in the air: the use of ballistic missiles or coordinated attacks on Western targets on European and American soil. The question now is, will Iran be able to react proportionately? What's more, won't this answer put the whole planet on a collision route? Israel, in turn, came out with what it considers an overwhelming victory. No aircraft has been slaughtered, the targets were accurately hit, and the enemy military leadership was partly beheaded. But that does not mean that the risk is over. On the contrary, it can only be the beginning of something much bigger and much more dangerous. The lion roared, but the dragon is still alive. While the heavens of Iran were still shaking with the echoes of the explosions, a bitter truth spread among the corridors of power in Tehran. The enemy not only attacked, he humbled. The damage caused by Operation Rise Lion was not only physical, but symbolic. The images of destroyed hangars, soldiers running in despair, and the total absence of a coordinated response transformed what was the pride of the Iranian military apparatus. But injured pride is dangerous, and Tehran is now in survival mode and rematch. The promise of an unprecedented retaliation has echoed not only in state networks, but in military communications and even religious sermons in mosques. The visibly shaken Ayatollah Khamenei stated that the blood of the martyrs will not be in vain, and that Israel opened the gates of hell. Apocalyptic language that is not just rhetoric. It carries weight, history, and headquarters of rematch. Sources of intelligence warn that Iran can activate its militia networks in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and even Latin America through Hezbollah and other aligned organizations. Retaliation, therefore, may neither be conventional nor immediate. It can be fragmented, prolonged, and attack where the world least expects. Western diplomats in countries such as Colombia, Argentina, and even Mexico were placed on maximum alert. The war now has no defined borders. Internally, the Iranian regime faces a dilemma. Reacting with strength may mean open war against a much higher military power, but not reacting weakens the government before its population and its regional allies. And this internal tension is causing a new round of repression. Mass arrests, total censorship on social networks, and an official speech that blames internal traitors for failures in the defense system. Meanwhile, in Israel, the climate is of tension masked by celebration. The government launched an official statement stating that the nuclear threat was neutralized indefinitely, but analysts warn, this statement is too optimistic. Although the main enrichment centers have been hit, Iran may have secret facilities or material already enriched in unknown places, or even outside the country, in areas under the influence of militias. Does the big question, however, remain, Israel in fact managed to paralyze the Iranian nuclear program? Or just delayed the inevitable? The reactions of the international community are divided. Europe officially condemns the attack, but diplomatic backstage reveals silent relief. France and Germany, for example, would have pressured Iran for years for more transparency, but to no avail. Now the damage has been done, and without debates or vetoes on the UN Security Council. And the United States? Washington's silence is deafening. Although the Pentagon confirms that it was warned in advance, the White House avoids any statement of direct support. Sources close to the US government claim that the order is clear, maintaining a distance, but ensuring that Iran does not attack US targets at risk of direct climbing. At the same time, there are naval movements in the Persian Gulf. Aircraft carrier were repositioned. Bases in Kuwait and Bahrain are on maximum alert. While the Israeli forces return to their confirmed lossless bases, Iran plunges into a mixture of mourning, anger, and urgency. A new factor further complicates the scenario. The deaths of high military commanders open command breaches, creating internal disputes for power, possible betrayals, and disorganization in the military response. And here comes a deeper geopolitical dimension, the invisible war by the narrative. Israel shows the world that it is capable of acting alone, fast and accurately. A direct message to your enemies, but also to your allies. At the same time, Iran tries to control damage with heavy advertising, spreading old videos as if they were recent, extolling resistance, and hiding the actual number of dead. But with the digital age, this tactic lasts shortly. Civil images filming the sky lit by missiles, destroyed buildings, and echoing sirens take over the nets. The truth escapes between the fingers of the censors. The next hours will be crucial. Western sources believe that Iran is already preparing a second wave of attacks, this time with long-range missiles that can reach targets within Israel and in allied countries. At the same time, Iranian hackers intensify cyber offensives, trying to paralyze energy systems, banks, and communications on Israeli soil. The whole world watches, holding the breath. The attack was an earthquake, but tsunami may be on the way. Does Iran really have the ability to respond to height? Or are you slowly bleeding, betting on a war of wear and advertising? The board changed. Now the game is different. With the smoke still hanging over Natan's wreckage, the question that dominates the backstage of diplomacy is direct and uncomfortable. Was that the beginning of World War III? Not yet. But Operation Rise Lion has created a dangerous precedent that preventive attacks, without endorsement of the UN or explicit support of allied powers, are now possible and even effective. What Israel demonstrated was not just military capacity. It was a willingness to face the consequences alone if necessary. And this message was clearly heard in Tehran, Moscow, Beijing, and even Pyongyang. Iran, pressured and exposed, has now entered in a total asymmetrical mode of war. Knowing that he cannot face Israel face-to-face in the open field, he is mobilizing his global allied network. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Houthis in Yemen, Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria. Mossad sources already confirm unusual movements at the northern borders of Israel. The fear is no longer just missiles but land-coordinated attacks, wide-scale terrorist. Behind the scenes, an even quieter game occurs. China, Iran's main commercial partner, called an emergency meeting with Russia. Both countries vehemently condemned the Israeli attack, but there is something more. There is a direct interest in keeping Iran strong as a counterweight to American power in the Middle East. A possible tacit alliance may be forming, where support for Tehran will be indirect but constant, whether in weapons, technology, or intelligence. Meanwhile, Israeli leaders make it clear that they will not retreat. The Prime Minister summoned a firm historical collective. Israel will not apologize for defending itself. The existential threat has been neutralized. If Iran tries to answer, we will respond 10 times more. Rhetoric is of strength, but also of isolation. The country knows that it crossed a line that many avoided decades ago. But he believes it was the only alternative to what they call the imminence of the Shiite bomb. The operation, according to the Israeli army, involved more than 200 fighters divided into 5 waves, each with specific objectives. Neutralizing air defenses, eliminating command centers, destroying research laboratories, and capturing data on the actual advancement of the nuclear program. The 5th wave was the most critical. It acted in sync with infiltrated land teams, responsible for hacking defense systems, disorienting radars, and marking targets with millimeter accuracy. The most impressive: no aircraft has been slaughtered. None. This is not just a military victory, it is a strategic humiliation for Iran. It shows that its defense system, so propagated in recent years, has been penetrated easily. And this generates instability within the regime itself, as generals and commanders begin to exchange accusations and seek guilty for the failure of response. The death of Hussein Salami and several key scientists disorganized the nuclear program chain of command. Documents captured by Israeli forces indicate that there were, in fact, plans to assemble the warheads in less than 2 weeks. This reinforces the Israeli discourse that the offensive was necessary. But it also raises an alert. How ready? And what can still be hiding? Now the international community is divided between fear and inertia. European countries try to put out the diplomatic fire, proposing new disarmament agreements, but Iran has made it clear that it does not want to negotiate while the blood is still fresh. On the other hand, Israel states that any proposal that does not involve the total dismantling of the Iranian program will be ignored. The tension increases. Airports are closing throughout the region. Western embassies are being evacuated. Israel put all its cities on maximum alert with anti-Iron Dome, David Sling and Arrow systems. The fear of a second wave of drones or missiles is constant, not just against Tel Aviv or Haifa. Targets in Dubai, Riyadh, and even Rome may be in the radar of retaliation. And here comes the most uncomfortable question. Is the world ready for a Middle East without breaks? The era of fragile agreements and veiled threats seems to be over. What Rise Lion opens is a new phase. Surgical attacks, strategic anticipation, and global retaliation. The doctrine of action before the bomb came out of paper and was applied with military success but unpredictable consequences. Finally, 2 questions haunt the global scenario. Was the nuclear threat really neutralized? The most honest answer is, perhaps for now. But it is a matter of time until the pieces return to the board and the game starts over. Scientific knowledge continues to exist. And where there is political will, there are means of reconstruction. Will Iran be able to respond to the time? In the direct military field, hardly. But the strength of Iran is in the unpredictable underground, in the war of shadows. The answer may come in a week, a month, or even years, but it will come. And it may not be against fighters in heaven, but against innocent civil lives anywhere in the world. Operation Rise Lion was a roar that silenced nuclear facilities and eliminated military leaders. But the echo of this roar hasn't ended yet, and the whole world feels that the next sound can be something much, much worse.